Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Hi, and welcome back to Realistic Sustainability. I'm Mike, and I am here with the marvelous Nicholas.
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm marvelous, but I'm feeling pretty hard and shining today, so I would say, yes, I am a piece of marble.
A piece of marble?
Yeah, so like you said marvelous, I heard it as marvelous, and so I thought it was funny, so I just went with it.
Fair enough, fair enough. So how are you today?
I'm okay. I'm trying to catch up on stuff. I got a lot of things I got to do. Like they're one-time things, finish paperwork up, and call these brides, and things that if I get them done, it frees up more time for other stuff.
Yeah, from my understanding, you have like 1 billion jobs already this year.
Billion's a bit of an oversell. No, currently I have 45.
Wow, 45. That's a heck of a start as you're still coming into the season. And I just recently had the Chamber of Commerce leader here in Durand was hoping you still have one more tasting out in this area.
I will not be doing a tasting out in that area. I don't know why it has to be out there. I will say this, that for me being a caterer, that I've been doing this now since the catering thing since 2017/18, the end of it. It astonishes me how many people expect you to bring the food to them for them to taste, because you want their business, but like it's food. Like, let me ask you a question: what tastes better, getting takeout or sitting at the place it's made where you get it hot and fresh? So it bothers me. I have a lady right now in Novi. She wants to book me for a taco nacho bar. I have a sampling coming up in April 16th that is free to prospective brides or anyone that hasn't been to one yet. She wants me to make a mini taco nacho bar and drive it to her so she can try it.
Well, we're all wanting things right now and in our way, so I can see how that would happen.
Well, it's human nature to want things your way, or to be slightly scared in your way, but it's still frustrating as a business owner.
Well, and I have to sell myself out during this time at the moment because over the last few months, just trying to get Dabble situated and getting all of my other responsibilities in order so that I can actually function like a normal person,
Mm-hmm.
I have done absolutely terrible in any of my sustainability actions. Energy in the home, energy in the business. This building currently sells bottled water. Like, I have done a horrible job structuring any of these things with sustainability, and I've actually taken a step back. I've quit bricking my plastics for a while, which is funny because I was talking to Jameson. I'm like, my goodness, look at the amount of trash we're taking out. And she's like, you've quit burning your papers and you've quit bricking your plastics. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm falling off the wagon, just like you would for like a diet or something.
You're like, oh, I suck again.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I'm like, just sitting, it just keeps playing over and over and over in my head. And we open Dabble for a day and we're doing things, and then all of a sudden I'm looking over, I have one trash can. I'm thinking, oh no, I have to have a recycle, I have to have a water bottle one. And we may still use water bottles here, but only because we're going to reuse the water bottles. We use them for projects, but I got to collect them. I got to be able to have ways to collect. Just having the recycle stuff on the wall is not enough.
So I want to pitch an idea to you. Having water bottles there, I understand using them for like the projects, the experiments, and the stuff with Dabble. I get that, but and I understand that they're really cheap, and it's infuriatingly cheap. Like it makes me so angry to know that I could get like a 36 pack of water for like $4. I really hate it. I know I said this. It sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not, because it's so much waste for literally like pocket change. And while I don't believe you should pay for water, I do think we should pay for water in a more recyclable container, which is why I want to pitch something to you. Have you ever heard about liquid death?
Liquid death?
Yes.
No, I have not, but it does not sound good.
So we seen a commercial for it at the Super Bowl, and I didn't even pay attention. I was too busy eating nachos. But Liquid Death is a brand of mountain spring water And it comes in these big, tall boy 12-ounce aluminum cans. It looks like a beer or an energy drink. It's just water. Yeah, I know. I think it's hilarious. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing.
Liquid death.
Yeah, it kills your thirst. Oh, that is so funny to me.
Huh. All right then.
It's like $21 for, I think it's a 12-pack or something. So it's about $1.70 a can or so. But it's, I don't know. Aluminum is recyclable. Plastic really isn't. At least not that plastic downgrades so much. It's insane. Unless only you can recycle that is to reuse it, repurpose it. You can't really melt that down.
Well, no, I had not heard of liquid death as for water, but what I have thought about is just getting the jugs, the large jugs, because I don't actually want to charge anything for water. What I would like to have is a situation where we have a water cooler, and that is free and anybody could use it whenever they want. We just have it refilled, and then we would go with, people who purchase sodas and stuff like that. So bulk water is my preference. I just haven't got that far.
Those dispensers aren't that expensive. I know that I'm really good at telling you how to spend your money. It's a gift. But I think you can buy one of those dispensers, one of the chilled ones that has a tall enough dispenser portion for water bottles. I think they're only like $150 or $200. I don't think they're that much.
Yeah, it's on the list. It's one of those things. Right now we just got the sign up on the building.
I've seen that. Looks sharp.
Once we are situated, then I have to go inch by inch and start fixing things, because I want to change the lighting. I want to do all the things that I already know how to do. I just need to do them now. And it's been plaguing me ever since Jamie made the comment that I have quit doing those little actions at home.
Well, there's that, but also you've always had a bad habit of looking at a job like I have to do this and this and this, and in your head you see yourself doing all of it. So obviously it's going to take longer. You're allowed to delegate to people, you are. Just throwing that out there. If you do every single thing yourself, of course it's going to take longer to get done.
Hey, I've started to delegate. We had a gentleman here not too long ago kilting and preparing the studio, because I haven't even started our studio yet. But now it started because I delegated.
Well, whatever it takes, little by little.
I know it's that is a very bad habit of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to get better at it. But I think what I'm doing here is phase 1 is just getting everything functional. Phase 2 will be getting back to the details, and that's just, I wanted to make sure I told everybody out there that even the people who do these shows fall off that wagon, and it has nothing to do with falling off the wagon. It's making sure we get back on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a good motto for anything in life. That a lot of times when you try to make good changes, if everything's easy in the rest of your life, then this changes stick and there's not a problem. But when things get hectic and hard, obviously some things are going to slip a little bit, but that's okay as long as you notice that, you make the effort to get back on the wagon.
Yep. So I'm selling myself out in public, but I promise to get back at it. Anyways, let's get on track for this week. This is something I will really enjoy discussing. I'm not sure if you will or not, but I find it super interesting. And that is, especially considering I'm going to be speaking about the future of downtowns and the future of cities here soon. This is smart cities. I want to talk about what a smart city is, what it should be, and a lot of times what people pretend that it is.
Okay.
For example, you ever go down a road where all the street lights are timed perfectly, where if you're driving the speed limit and it's green, it's going to be green all the way down.
Those are what I call unicorn moments. It very seldom ever happens to me. It's usually the opposite. I'm in a hurry. Look, red, 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 red. I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. And because, so a little fun fact about that. That's normal. If you take your day at your normal pace, you should be accustomed to the normal cycles of the other traffic and the lights and the timing. So obviously when you're running late, you're going to see a lot more red lights because you would have otherwise already been past them, or you would have left before they showed up, depending on your normal schedule. So, but yeah, it's frustrating.
A lot of times people think that that's an attribute of a smart city, and it's not.
No,
it's just an analog setup where they just plug it in and try to reduce traffic congestion through timing.
Yeah, that's why they periodically will put that counter across the road for a couple of days to count the amount of traffic and like how heavy it is, so they can change the timing. Really, to be honest, at best, it's just a really, really mathematical huge guess. It's not even like it's like there's no AI involved. It's not like intelligent. It's okay. We had 500 cars pass from this time to this time on this date here, and then 750 from this time to this time. What's the correlation? Blah blah blah. And they just plug those magic numbers in, and here you go.
Well, and it's no different than some large cities have observers, people who work in kind of a control central and help control the street lights and different things. That is also not a smart city. That is just
That's a person.
manual control.
That is a Sims game.
Well, it's a very important Sims game. We don't want them to like decide it's a game because it could get ugly. But smart cities actually run off of the Internet of Things, this intercommunication from each piece where it independently functions without a person. It's not AI, because AI makes, in a sense, decisions, but it's very much machine learning. And then using communication through the internet back and forth to be able to maximize our efficiencies in all ways. So when you look at that, you have a whole city designed this way. If anybody's ever heard me talking about urban planning, to me, it's really fun. I like urban planning. It's one of those things I learned in college that I didn't mean to learn. And then I got here to Durant and became part of the planning commission. And it really is interesting.
Okay, to be fair as your brother, like that is not surprising to me now that I see the big picture. But like our entire lives, there was 2 video games you always played: Sid Meier's Civilization and Madden Football, generally on the coaching mode. So I should have known a long time ago. You just like to organize stuff and make it happen. So like, you're literally playing. Your whole life is now a Sims game. It really is.
It's very entertaining. I really enjoy it. But I really like that planning process. And I constantly preach making sure every square inch is what it should be when it comes to being a person-centric city.
Okay.
And that's the concept between us. That's the concept of a smart city. Everything functions for the flow of the city and the residents within.
Oh, the sarcasm is strong today. I'm going to try to keep my comments to a minimum.
Well, and with efficiencies comes sustainability or long-term sustainability. So you have a lot of different aspects. You have to pick the right materials that are going to accomplish whatever you want to do. You want the infrastructure itself to be functioning like an organism. You want it to be able to be in a nonstop flux so that things flow properly.
That seems like that's the most important part, though. Without the infrastructure, nothing else is really possible.
Well, and that is the backbone of the whole process. So the infrastructure is your buildings, your energy grid, your transportation process and the transportation modes, all your municipal services, your water, your utilities, all these things kind of interconnect, your waste management, your fire and police. These things all have to be done in the most efficient possible way. It drives down the cost and it creates a better living experience for everybody involved. Now, is there a city out there that has accomplished this? No. There's pieces. They have little pieces. They're working on creating full smart cities.
Well, yeah, but I think okay, so just spitballing from the idiot's perspective here. I think it'd be a little out of the question if there was a city that's accomplished this, because we're kind of slowly but surely talking about kind of rebuilding an entire city, starting with infrastructure and moving up. And all the cities are old unless they build a brand new one that they start a new place to live. It'd be really hard to believe that there's any city that's accomplished this yet.
Well, and I don't believe I'm not a believer in there's going to be new cities. What I'm a believer in is you take a large city that has failed, that has been devastated for one reason or another, and when you redesign and rebuild that city, you do it in this manner.
Well, you effectively make it a new city, but I'm not saying that they're going to build some kind of giant, metroplex. I'm not talking about like some apocalyptic crazy thing. I'm just saying that like because all the cities are old, and the country itself, we're only a couple hundred years old, so everything that's here has pretty much been here the whole time. It makes sense why there isn't any that have achieved it yet.
Well, it's like I've always said, it's either small towns that are growing or those big cities that have shrunk are your best opportunities.
Oh,
So
Flint's a prime candidate.
Flint is a perfect candidate to redesign into a 100% smart city. And I think it would be an amazing project and be a blast. Same thing here in Durand. We're a small town that is growing. We could do the same thing. It's just a matter of need. It's a matter of funding. It's a matter of will, because it's a big change. Everything is tracked, but it's not tracked because you're a good guy or bad guy. It's not Big Brother. It is literally attempting to create the best living environment.
Mm-hmm.
So the goals of smart cities obviously are threefold, and it's the same three legs that we see in the triple bottom line for businesses these days, the ones who are trying to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happens with people really trying to build a technologically advanced city. The first is always the same, is you got to make sure that it is economically viable and that the city itself is optimized for economics. Honestly, in a small scale, if you've listened to us in the past and talking about walkability in towns, that's really what we're doing in Durand, is creating a better economic environment by taking people out of the vehicle and putting them on foot.
Yeah, you want people to want to be there. You want them to want to spend money there and continue to help support the community by being part of it.
Right. And then there's areas around us that are so busy, I won't go there. Those are too busy. You can't stop anywhere. If you only go there when you're forced to go there. That is how a city can screw up its own economic system, by being too busy. No one wants to actually stop and shop, or no one wants to go to any vendor or any company in that area. So you got to create this flow.
Yeah, there is something to say about a lot of people feeling areas when you say too busy. I look at it as two different perspectives. Ultimately, they're the same thing, but like one is when you say too busy, I look at super big cities and the traffic is a nightmare and parking is a nightmare, and maybe you would love to park somewhere and shop for a couple hours, but you don't want to waste the time to find a parking space. You don't want to try to fight traffic, and you don't want to have to fight. A lot of those cities have one way, so you might have to go 2 blocks out of your way just to get back going the direction you are. And that's one type of busy. But then the other one is that oftentimes in these cramped situations, people are kind of a little on the negative side. They get overstimulated. Things have a tendency to be too populated. So if there's too much stuff going on, even if you want to be there, you don't want to be there. It's a very hard thing to express if you've never experienced that just being overwhelmed by simply standing there, like watching everything going around. It'd be like being a beetle watching an ant colony. You're like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
yeah.
And the one of the concepts is creating that comfort. So the second leg of the three legs of this is the social aspect. It has to be appealing to the person, and that doesn't create that anxiety just for being there. There's a lot of cities I've gone to in the past few years that just being there, is anything necessarily happening? No, but it's so overwhelming that it is not comfortable. And that is part of creating smart cities, which gives the feeling of space. It gives the feeling of that freedom and comfort. The only way I can give examples is like what we're doing here in Durand. Again, we're trying to create the walkability. So in order to get someone from point A to point B, we have to assume the most amount of comfort needed. Wider sidewalks, extra benches, shade, excellent lighting. These are the things that will get someone to walk from one spot to another.
Well, really, what you want to try to duplicate is the simplistic amenities of like an outlet mall. I'm not saying you want your town to be a mall, but if everything you're describing is exactly how outlet malls, big ones, are designed. Yeah, every couple stores, you got these big benches. Sometimes you have areas to rest, to get refreshments, to get food. The lighting's excellent. It's usually very friendly. It's usually kept up and it's clean, and that's the reason they're designed that way. It's also the reason that malls, like indoor malls, are designed the way they are. An indoor mall is designed where the central location of the mall is generally where you go get your food and you sit down and you relax, and the outer areas where you do your shopping, as to where an outlet malls, everything's outside, and you're able to kind of enjoy nature while you go store to store. Really, you could kind of use those as like a big city versus a small town kind of scenario in terms of an example. I know that's probably not what you were thinking, but that's all I think of when you talk about it.
No, the psychology is the same. It doesn't matter if it was thought of for malls or thought of in small towns or now being retrofitted for large towns,
Mm-hmm.
where they take away a good chunk of that extra parking to create green spaces with places to sit and maybe have a meal or read a book, or making sure there's plenty of shade where people are, even though you're in a city. And when I say city, you think of like downtown New York where it's cramped, but you create these openings, these spaces where people can walk down the street and not have the sun beating down on them, to feel like you're still in a common outdoor space, even though there's a skyscraper to your right, kind of thing. So it is that they want to keep the social side of it comfortable. And the last leg kind of feeds into that is the environmental side. You want the highest efficiency, the least amount of waste, and green space, places
Mm-hmm.
for nature to be integrated into your city and not necessarily fully excluded. Now, do we want wolves roaming the cities? Probably not, but we definitely want birds. We want insects. We want all the things we need in those towns, and that's part of that built environment.
Okay, so what that last thing kind of bothers me. Not after the wolves, not the wolves. No, don't worry about that. I'm not ridiculous, but what I don't like about it, it's the only part I don't like, is just the idea that, like, when you have these green spaces, like, animals are going to come to them, and bugs and birds and anything that can fly is fine, but when it comes to smaller mammals, that's a big issue in cities. They're pretty much on a death sentence. I mean,
Well,
I'd love to say I'm wrong, but if a raccoon or a possum or squirrels, they wander to those roads, that's terrible. So that makes that alone makes me sad, and that exists no matter what city. It doesn't matter, smart city, regular city. That's what happens when humans expand into nature. It does, or brings the nature back into what they've already destroyed. Which it's like I don't know how to they I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm sorry, Michael.
well, it's also like replacing, let's say, maybe 10 bricks in a building to have the little bee holes in them. You ever see the
Yeah,
bricks that have those?
I have not actually.
It is just drilled holes into a brick that are different sizes so that insects and primarily bees have a place to
Okay.
go. Nighttime, that's like little bee hotels, and giving those little spots throughout the city. So you want to accommodate not only what humans think is the most important, which is the economic side, but we want them to have that social understanding and feel comfortable themselves, that psychological social part, but also cater to the environment, all within the same system that works as one large symbiotic relationship that can continue to grow without hitting these limits. And you do that through the Internet of Things, where everything communicates with itself to help alleviate traffic, to help alleviate any kind of congestion, to keep the energy flow as it needs to. For example, let's start with just buildings. So we change the scope from the city down to the building scale.
Okay.
So you start creating your structures more like we do a passive house. Remember, we've talked in the past about those net zero homes or close to zero
Mhm.
homes where energy, the orientation matters. Are they getting sun? Is this something that they can reduce their heating and cooling through orientation? Are they picking the right materials to be able to collect or release energy? They build these homes, or they build these buildings to take the least amount from the system.
So I think that in itself is probably the best place that you could start as we're talking about it. I when you look at these big cities, these huge skyscrapers, There's two problems I see with that. One, every giant skyscraper was some architect's attempt to put his face on the planet forever. I look at it as pure ego. And two, I look at it as it's just empty space. So they build these ginormous buildings with the promise of, oh, so many offices and so much lodging and blah, blah, blah. And then after a couple decades, you see these huge buildings with like 15 to anywhere, up to 70 floors. And it'll say, 45,000 square feet or 200,000 square feet. And they're for sale or for rent with a huge lease because there's almost no reason to occupy such a space. And if a company does occupy it, it's, oh, we're going to move our accounting firm to the Roethlisberger building. We need one floor. It's got 45. We need one.
Right. Or a lot of times those companies buy those things to brand them. They want to put their sign out there so everybody sees it.
That's what I mean, though. But I'm not talking about buying them. Just the fact that they're built is just a waste. It's a great way to just blow money away real fast.
Well, remember, we went through a phase. We went through a phase in the United States where we wanted to build these big monstrosities. And I don't mean just, skyscrapers for business, but malls, the larger strip malls, all these things that are dying now. I think it's probably 80s through 08s, roughly, where they just built as many as they could. Well, massive shopping complexes.
It was capitalizing on convenience. Well, now convenience no longer dictates we need to go somewhere else to get our goods. Through online shopping and e-commerce, we can get all our stuff we need online. It can be delivered right to us. Maybe not as fast as we like it per se, but if you give someone, hey, do you want that right now? Do you want to get in your car and drive an hour and take a shower and get all prettied up to go buy something, or do you want to just stay in your PJs with a cup of hot chocolate and order it and get it tomorrow morning from Amazon? Right. I could bet 9 times to 10 they're going Amazon.
Right. We just evolved beyond it is what happened. And now we have all these massive structures. So when you retrofit and you go back to creating these smart cities, it's a lot like getting a home assistant for your house. If you have, Google or Amazon, I'm not going to say the names that turn them on, because if someone's listening to this, all of a sudden their house starts lighting up with questions. I say home assistant because none of them respond to it, but it's the same as what we do in our homes. You can create some efficiencies that way where things are interconnected. It's a very small and primitive scale compared to a large building, but you can have things set. If there's no one on that floor should shut down, and not just, be ready at standby, but shut down. Like the breaker is off, kind of shut down. That whole floor is just not being used. If someone hits the button on the elevator that says they're going to that floor, by the time they get to it, it's lit and heated.
I actually think you could control the water use the same way. Because if you have a ridiculously huge building and it's not heated, throughout most of the Midwest and really East Coast, most of northern states, it gets pretty cold in the winter. So they've got to be heated per se, or
at minimal levels.
Yeah, or just shut the water off to that level. Not they can't explode if it's not full.
Right. Well, and that's what happens is you have this automated cleaning. So like the Roomba, if you will, example, automated cleanings. You have energy levels drop to the minimum. If it has to maintain a temperature over freezing, then the room sits at 50 kind of thing. So they bring it down to some levels that are acceptable. But as soon as someone hits the elevator button that says they're going to that floor, things start turning on and start waking up. So in the meantime, if no one goes to that floor, it completely shuts it down. And that's how the whole building should work. Not necessarily floor by floor. If you've got 5 offices in that building that don't get used, till someone tries to unlock that door, that room is still in standby. And that's how these buildings will function and drop that total cost, drop that embodied energy, not only through its construction, orientation, and processes, but this whole interconnectivity. It is our action that turns on an area. Remember how we talked about walking down the hall and the lights would turn on? I know you were thinking it.
I haven't forgotten it, but I'm not going to bring it up because you'll cut this whole segment out again.
but that's how the whole building works. And that's kind of how you have that function. Now, the same thing happens with the electrical grid, where right now we just pump as much energy as we can based on the need. And if our need goes up, we just pump more in. And if the need goes down, we stop producing. The grid changes everything on how it functions. That's that micro smart grids where it can not only predict usage and need, but shift also with all clean inputs. This is, solar, wind, hydro, tidal with a hydrogen fuel mix, where if the city needs more, it fires up the hydrogen fuel. If it needs less, it shuts that down. If it's got too much, then it desalinates water on the coast areas to be able to feed the rest of the cities for both fresh water and fuel for the hydrogen fuel cell. So this is how like your grid will work, because your energy will change. Remember, transportation will change. You'll be charging in different ways. It has to be able to communicate. So if that grid knows section A is doing just fine, but section B is struggling, it will start to move the balance of need from one to the other. It'll start pulling electricity from another grid or another section over to this section and try to balance it out. It will also communicate with those buildings. Is there a problem with the buildings? Is it drawing too much energy for a reason? Are there a bunch of cars in the parking lot that are on chargers that are full but still pulling a trickle charge? It can shut that down.
So when we have things plugged into buildings like that, I know that when things are plugged in, even though they don't need power, they do still pull a tiny bit. Is there a way to stop that other than cutting the power off to them?
No, you have to cut the power off to them because resistance.
Okay.
It's trickle charging because batteries slowly degrade, but it also is the resistance of electrons going from point A to point B. There's several things. You give off heat, that is a loss so that it tries to trickle it back in. But the fact is once it's full or close to full, it doesn't necessarily need, especially since the building will know your alarm clock is set for 8. You're not even going to wake up till 8 o'clock. So I've got maybe 45 minutes of charging to do. I'm shutting down the system. And at 7:30, I'm going to go ahead and start it back up, knowing that you're going to get up at 8 because you've set your alarm at 8. So it's an interconnection communication between things that you don't think should be talking to each other that are integrated into a smart city.
Okay.
So now you don't have this charge process, because I charge it at 9 o'clock at night, but I'm going to lose all night long and regain it all night long. When the system can just analyze that if I don't charge anymore right now, by 7 o'clock, it's going to need 45 minutes and he's not getting up till 8 o'clock. I'll just disconnect.
Well, yeah, we just kind of talked about, we didn't talk about this. We were talking about phones before we started recording and how like different chargers, charge your phone different speeds. And I have a charger that will charge my phone in half an hour. So it serves no purpose to have it plugged in all night long.
Well, we have all these vehicles plugged into the system. Let's say there's all of a sudden a massive pull for one grid over another. And let's say that it can't necessarily compensate with the neighboring grids. Well, it can compensate with the neighboring cars, pulling electricity from their batteries back into the grid system to help compensate, knowing that all it has to do is weather that storm, get to the other end, and before your 8 o'clock alarm is up, charge your car. You know no different. We're just using stored power. That's what these systems will do, and we will not know that it ever happened. And we'll produce less, we'll use less, and the efficiencies will go up. So that gives you an idea of that, almost that Internet of Things conversation back and forth. But I think one of the bigger things that we're going to see in cities is transportation. And not only the modes, because you're going to see a lot more of that mass transportation. You ever see an illustration where it shows 40 people on a bus, and it has one bus with 40 people standing next to it, and then it has 40 people in all their separate cars. So you have 40 people standing there and 40 cars lined up down the road.
Yeah.
It's a very good illustration of what happens on a road. So you'll see a lot of mass transportation being as quick and as efficient as possible, being able to get people from point A to point B without any discomfort. And that will be the goal of mass transportation, because that will take a lot of cars right off the road. Plus, if the city is comfortable and inviting, you'll walk those short distances. You won't take the mass transportation 3 blocks. You'll walk the 3 blocks, which is its own thing.
That's a really good concept. So public transportation really interests me in this I don't want to say category, but like in this concept about the smart cities. Transportation really interests me because I think that could be a really useful way to cut the emissions that we currently produce down tremendously. If we could, like you just described, find a way for people to really rely on the public transportation or get back to walking and riding bikes.
Yeah, and remember when I talked about that clean input system, I guarantee someone right now is saying, well, there is no emissions. You're using an electric car on a clean grid.
People have to make the electricity.
Well, but there's equipment. There's, remember, embodied energy of something. So all those batteries, all those vehicles, they get built. All that material has to move. But the less that we have and the longer it lasts, the better. And that's how the systems will be designed, that if there is cars, the goal is to use them less so they last longer. So you want to make it very easy for mass transit to be used. It creates a better flow of traffic. It becomes very, very easy to move from point A to point B. And if, like I said, the city is nice and the city is inviting and it's not this overwhelming thing to walk, you'll get off at the stop that fits you best and you'll walk the rest of the way. So it isn't just that process, but remember we talked about the traffic lights being on a timer. This will be machine learning. This will be a machine that learns with additional sensors. A lot of it won't be like radar, like a lot of things are. It will be tracking cell phones. So right now, your GPS will tell you there's a crash ahead or a delay up ahead.
Yeah.
That delay is because it's tracking cell phones as they move, and they've started to move slower. So once the cell phones start moving at a slower rate, the line on your GPS starts to turn like an orange, and once they stop, it turns red, and then it assesses how many phones enter in and exit, the amount of time, and then it gives you an assumed weight. That is how your GPS does the magic that is on your screen. Same thing happens in the thought process of the city. The city is going to have all those same tracking devices. So now it's communicating to the bus. 5th Street is clogged. Well, it kicks over to 4th. And it starts to divert traffic, which quickly alleviates the problem, opens it back up, and then continues it going again. Let's say one direction because of a sporting event.
Okay.
Is clogged something up. The city itself will readjust. You'll have less lines in, way more lines out. There's even concepts out there of using solar roads to be able to put arrows, to put arrows on streets. So these narrow streets all become one way at the end of sporting events. It just puts arrows down the road to let you know right now, this is not a two-way street. It allows everybody out. It lets people evacuate much quicker. And then once it starts to alleviate, the streets change back to their normal configuration as a two-way street.
To be fair, that seems like that'd be terrifying if like you're driving down the road and your car alerts you, this road is going to be changing direction in 10 minutes. You better get off.
Well, you're traveling down blocks. They're very short spans. What will happen is the city will know if there's a car on that road. It will turn on the red lights, so not allowing any more cars down the road. Once they all evacuate, it makes the change.
It's still an intimidating concept to think about.
But it's really kind of cool that the city will learn the ebbs and flows of what people do and make it easier for everybody else around to do the things that they want to do. Certain parts of town have street lights, but no people that travel through there. Those will go down to standby lighting, that like a real dim yellow lighting. And as you get closer, or as the system sees a cell phone getting closer, the lights will slowly brighten up for you as you pass through there and then slowly dim back down, greatly reducing the amount of energy we use, but still giving you markers so you know your directions.
I dig it.
It will also greatly reduce wasted light, that whole light pollution problem that we talked about not too long ago. It
Yeah.
will greatly reduce that because all this extra lighting for no purpose, for no one around, gets dimmed down to a marker. And they can even be LED. They can switch to red light and dim down. And then as people approach, it slowly shifts over to a blue light, which is easier to see and brightens up the space. And as you pass through, dims back down, shifts to a red.
That's actually a really cool concept. This is just one of those things where like there's so many different aspects of it that I'm really having a hard time wrapping my brain around it. I'm trying to like everything you say, I'm trying to piece together in my head, but then it seems like such an in-depth concept that when you move on to the buildings and then the roads and all the infrastructure separately, it's just huge.
Yeah, and the city itself will learn from our actions to be more efficient. So if, let's say, school lets out in the wintertime and it's dark,
Mm-hmm.
Sporting events for the school let out, or after school programs, they always let out at the same time. Just before they come outside, those lights turn and are brightened because they know they're going to be needed.
Okay. I like
And now
that.
it knows the cell phones are in the building and it has to come out. So just before they come out, it creates this welcoming environment, safe environment. They leave, everything dims back down to a minimum, to a
Okay.
marker. So using sensors, but also primarily the Internet of Things, that interconnectivity discussion between all of our electronics is the most important part. And then, of course, a centralized machine learning. And again, machine learning is not AI. AI learns to evolve and change based on its needs.
Mm-hmm.
Machine learning optimizes based on the inputs given. There is no thought per se. It's
Okay.
taking the data, the numbers. If it's always 15, but it only accounts for 7, it will learn that it will need to be at 15.
Oh,
It's
okay. That's
not
easy enough.
it's not making a decision. It's just taking that data and trying to optimize its answers. So, transportation, transit, all that. And remember, that also means that you have to build your city and town with the complete streets design in mind, where it doesn't matter where you get off at the bus stop, almost everything you need is in the same block. Doesn't matter which block you're on. People want restaurants, they want a bank, they want all these amenities, they want to get their hair done. All these things are done within little pockets and sections where when you get off the bus, everything you need is right there. Now you might choose a different stop because you really like this restaurant, but everything you need is there.
Okay. Well, I kind of like that idea, though. I like that having the general amenities located so close to it that you don't have to travel, unless you have that one thing you really love. I like having everything so convenient. And there goes that word again.
Mm-hmm. And again, the infrastructure system
Mm-hmm.
is all designed to communicate with each other. So the water treatment plant sometimes has to cool water. And we see that in Frankenmuth and Holland, where they run it under the streets and create this heated streets, heated sidewalks by using the wasted heat from another process. All that stuff gets integrated also. So your goal is to waste nothing. So if your waste management system scans and
Mm-hmm.
sees, okay, everybody has put their trash out. Let's say they have a platform that you have to set it on. Well, that system, in a sense, weighs it and says, we don't need the big truck this week. We can go with the smaller truck, or we can expand our route with the bigger truck. We can have less trucks on the road. We can do this in a different way because there's less out there right now. And it can assess what it needs based on what we put out
Yeah.
and keep all the excess off the roads. Right now, we just take a garbage truck, it starts a route, and when it's full, it goes back to its home to dump, and the next truck shows up where that one left off.
Mm-hmm.
Group A is done for the day. They go dump their cube on the pile, clean their truck, and go home. While Group B now picks up where they left off. Well, what if we knew what we needed right off the get-go, and we just functioned in that way? Because there are times that there's less out there, and if there's less out there, why do we have so many things on the road? That's what this will do. The same thing will happen in the facility. When they start dumping this into the conveyor belt, we currently have magnets for the metals. We have, different densities and weights fall to different levels, but it will be set up as a primarily almost everything is recycled in some manner. Even if it's the paper getting shredded so it can be composted. The paper gets shredded, the cardboard gets shredded, it gets mixed with the organic food waste, it gets spun in this large item, and then they lay it out on the ground so that in these long rows, so it becomes soil. And part of how the waste management company makes its money back is by having this rich soil that the community needs or the city needs for its projects.
Okay, I didn't actually know that. So to be fair, here waste management, I know they have a contract where they take a lot of garbage in from other places, but I just kind of thought that's how they got paid. I never
Well,
really
they do. Our
never really
current system, they just throw it in a hole.
yeah.
But they actually have all these other financial opportunities that they don't actually use. They do
That's
collect the
unfortunate.
gas. They collect methane and
Mhm.
sometimes have contracts to sell the methane. That's the one off gas that is counterproductive. But they could separate everything and almost nothing would go into the ground. Certain plastics would be turned into pellets so that those pellets could then be used at other manufacturers. Paper, cardboard, all that stuff could be shredded for composting. The food waste the same. Of course, all the precious metals are just that, even more precious now than they once were. There's all
Mhm.
these different processes they could do with waste. They just don't. We just throw it all in a hole so that we can mine it some other day.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really ultimately what's going to happen is hundreds of years after we're gone, people are going to be digging these holes and finding pieces of plastic and little bits of gold and little bits of platinum, and they're going to think that there's, oh my god, there's this big vein here, and they're going to dig and dig and dig, and they're going to find tiny little bits of things, and they're going to think, what were these people thinking? Why were they so disposable?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It sucks.
Well, a lot of things, everything will become in a sense automated.
Hmm.
We've already talked about farms being automated, but some of those large structures that don't need to be there anymore can turn into vertical farming, where the arm is centralized in the center and it functions to farm all the floors of
Hmm.
the vegetables or lettuce or whatever it happens to be. We also optimize our police and our fire response. Everything is based on anticipation. It's based on what is happening in the city in real time. And the city can react. The city itself can react to disaster or the possibility of disaster. If it starts getting minor tremors, if it can now sense based on the weather pattern, there's this percentage of a large tornado coming through the city, it will start to adapt, change the roadways, keep people away from that disaster. It will then react based on what it anticipates is coming.
That's kind of cool.
And could save the lives of up to millions of people because the city reacts to what we don't even know is coming yet.
It'd be really cool to have warnings for things like oh god, what are they called? When there's a tremendous wave, like a that's gonna be
Tsunami?
yeah, but I mean caused by is that the one that's caused by like an earthquake?
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be cool to have warnings for that kind of stuff. I've watched videos where you slowly watch I guess I'd call it the tide, but the water just retract off the shore,
Mhm.
and you see it start to raise. It's really ominous. It's something that I think that if I live on the coast, I'd be like perpetually terrified of all the time.
Yeah, and it'd be nice that even when we're not paying attention, something is.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, that may be one of the coolest phrases you've ever said.
So if the city feels tremors underneath, even if it's man-made, whatever it happens to be, it's out of the ordinary. This building structure is starting to move. It calculates, can this structure handle that movement? If it's anywhere within a safety factor, the building itself evacuates itself. Even though it's
Okay.
a frequency we never felt. So that's how a smart city would function, communicating at all aspects for the benefit of the citizen.
Well, I think in that regard, I think it's a no brainer. So that we should definitely move towards. I think there's lots of aspects of cities where they could improve. I think that for starters, as they as these cities are being, I guess you call it renovated or torn down and rebuilt, I think downsizing is another key factor in it. A lot of these cities originally were built to hold millions of people, and now they don't. So they don't really we don't need all those neighborhoods that no one lives in. I'd almost be willing to say kind of repurpose what you can, reuse what you can. But if you have, 6 or 7, maybe 8, 9 acres worth of just residential where the houses are burnt or are way beyond repairing, bulldoze them and turn them into farmland, grow something. I mean, maybe not farmland per se, but get use out of it. I don't. I think that has a lot of wasted space, Michael. wasted.
And what happens is you start to shrink down. You build the core. You build that 2 or 3 blocks is where you start, and you get that thing working, and people start to enjoy it, and you go to the next block and the next block, and on its own, it does this growth where the homes and the apartment buildings and everything just starts to communicate with each other, and it creates this massive symbiotic relationship between economics, social aspects, and environment. So now I am sure I missed a ton. So if anybody out there has other things that you think that should have been discussed in this episode, send us a message. We always like to hear that.
Please do. And I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to apologize for my lack of interjections and quippy comebacks. And I spent this entire one learning. I don't really know much about this. So it's kind of blows me away.
That's all right. Next week, you'll be doing all kinds of talking because we're going to talk about sustainability and vacations. And you've been wanting to talk about things like cruises now for a while.
Well, I brought the cruise ship thing up months ago.
So you'll get that opportunity next week. But thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend or just on social media. You know what? We're even okay if you share it with people you don't like. I'm totally cool with that too. If you want to support realistic sustainability in other ways, you can always support us through our sustainer on the Anchor hosting site or on greeningyourlife.org/podcast. But at the very minimum, please do us one huge favor. Leave us a 5-star review, click a like, click a follow, anything that shows interaction that tells people you're listening to us. That helps us out tremendously. So thank you for doing that. And again, we're only getting together each week so we can get a little bit better every single day. Little bit, big bit. Thanks for listening. I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And we will see you next week.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Rob, and I'm the host of The Curated Culture, a weekly podcast dedicated to dissecting the latest and greatest news from around the world of tech and pop culture. Now, we all know the internet can be a busy, noisy place, so let us calm that noise for you. Join us as we discuss the latest and greatest topics from the people and sources that matter most. Check us out every Thursday as we jump into fresh, original content, new interviews, and a host of other subjects that we know you'll find interesting. So jump in to whatever your favorite podcast app is and search The Curated Culture. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And in the meantime, we'll catch y'all on the air.